Lovely to see everyone live and online. Nice to see a full base medrash, which makes such a difference. But before I forget, just remind everyone this will be the last Shiur till Muktza after Hanukkah and holiday season. I began last year looking at the Gemara in Kuf Lamed Ches, which speaks about the broken staftal, the broken kira, where a leg has fallen off it, and the question is whether this the question is what the Muktza there is where two legs have fallen off, what the Muktza is. So Rashi says that the reason is it's got nothing to do with Hilchos Muktza. This is a new gezerah, Shema Yitzka, in case one fixes it, and the Rach and the Meiri explain that this is because it's Muktza, because it's unusable when it's missing two legs. And all I really said in the last year was that the Meiri would appear to be consistent. Well, let's start the other way around. Rashi would appear to be consistent with his view, as we speculated, that, but at least is explicit in Tosfos, that it doesn't matter that the bed is currently useless. It doesn't matter that the legs are currently useless. Nonetheless, it maintains a shame keli because it can be because it's omed to be restored, to be fixed, and reverted back to being a usable object. So even though currently it's completely useless, according to Rashi in Hilchos Shabbat, it maintains a shame keli because it was a keli, it will be a keli, it's destined to go back to being a keli. It doesn't need a complex fixing process. Whatever it is that defines it, it's and therefore it's muchan agav avi, and that's the view of Rashi. And therefore Rashi thinks that the Muktza wouldn't apply in this case of the kira with the broken legs, and there's only a new gezerah Shema Yitzka. That's the view of Rashi. The Meiri is consistent with his view that the reason why it's not Muktza, why the Delosis Akedi are not Muktza is because it currently has a use. It still has an element of its original function. It can still be used as a cover for the or a door for the object, for the cupboard, and that's why the door is not Muktza. Whereas over here, where it's completely useless, it is Muktza. So that's what we explains in the Meiri and Rashi. The truth is that there's a lot to. It happens to be that Rashi seems consistent with his view, and the Meiri seems consistent with his view. However, it's not obvious that this is the only distinction one can make, and I just want to spell this out. So, for example, as I mentioned, I hope I printed it in the source sheets. Yeah, I did. Rabbeinu Chananel also says the same as the Meiri. Rabbeinu Chananel says the reason why it's Muktza, why you're not allowed to move it, is because it's Muktza. And you could explain this in other ways. You could say that really the Lomdus is because it's omed lachzor. The intention is, it's as Rashi said, its plan is to put it back. But in the case of the cupboard with a broken door, there you can say Rashi Svara, there's muchan agav avian. The cupboard is not Muktza, and therefore the deles is still omed to be reattached to the cupboard. In the case of the legless kira, it's useless as it currently is. If it's useless as it currently is, maybe in Rashi Svara would agree it's Muktza. Again, just to spell this out. The Rashi teaches us, the Meiri and others say that the reason why the deles isn't Muktza is because it's still useful. In a sense, a boring svara, less mekudesh svara. It still has a functionality, albeit a lessened functionality. Rashi says an exciting svara. Rashi says even though it's currently useless, since the door is only to be reattached, it still has its shame keli. Maybe that's only where, and Rashi calls this agav avi, and it's not Muktza, incidentally of its parent's keli. It's only made to be reattached to a keli which isn't Muktza, and therefore it doesn't become Muktza. What happens if the parent keli itself has fallen apart? Imagine not a cupboard with a door where the door detaches, but where you have a two-piece cupboard where the cupboard sort of separates into two. So you don't have a cupboard at all. That's exactly the case of the legless kira. The legs have fallen off the kira, the legs are useless, and the kira is useless. So how will we jump in that case? So you could argue the same svara. It still has a shame kli because it's still omed to be reattached, and therefore it's not Muktza. And indeed, that's Rashi's stance, where in the Gemara of the legless kira, the Rashi says the only reason it's not allowed to be moved is because of the new gezerah, Shema Yitzka. But you could argue to the contrary. You could say the reason it's not Muktza with the door is because the cupboard is not Muktza, and the door is a keli agav the cupboard. But in a case where the whole keli has fallen apart, where the whole thing is useless, there you can't say the svara of omed to be reattached. It's not omed to be reattached, it's omed to remake the keli. In the meantime, it's lost its shame keli, and therefore it would be muktza. So this is a very important nafkamina la halacha. First of all, again, the Mishnah Berurah paskins, like what we're calling Rashi's view, the Mishnah Berurah paskins that even though the broken keli is currently useless, if it's made to be reattached, it isn't muktza. Is this only in a case where you have the svara of agav aviem, where the primary keli is not muktza, and you're reattaching something to a primary keli? Or is this even in a case where the primary keli is broken? So you have a keli that's made of parts, and the parts could be reconfigured together. But in the meantime, they're useless. A very common example, by the way, of this is a pair of glasses, right? So the arm of the glasses fall off, or let's say both arms fall off. So it really is useless. So do you say the svara that since it's made, you can't fix it on Shabbos, by the way. Do you say the svara that since it's made to be refixed, therefore it's not muktza, though there would still be the gzeira perhaps of Shami Yitzchak, maybe not? Or do you say the svara that it's muchan, and in other than that it's muchan agav aviem, and therefore it's not muktza? Or do you say the svara of muchan agav aviem doesn't make sense? Because the whole lomtus of muchan agav aviem is that the parent keli is still useful, but in this case the parent keli is useless. So that's one shining halacha how to learn. Again, I'm not so interested in this for now in the gzeira Shami Yitzchak. That's a separate sugya. The only reason I'm bringing the Gemara in Kuf Lamed Ches is because it's ostensibly a parallel Gemara, a Gemara in which you have a keli that's broken, but fixable. You see it's fixable from the whole gzeira. So it's not shivrei keli. We're not talking about like Tosfos brought. It's not a smashed urn or something, smashed vase where you've got fragments. It's fixable and reasonably easily so. And we're trying to analyze in that case, would it be muktza or not? Do we say in Rashi's svara that it's made to be fixed and if it still has a shame keli? Or do we say no, the whole lomdus of made to be fixed is where you have a parent keli which isn't muktza, and the question, and this is made to be reattached back to its parent. But in the case where the parent itself is broken, like the kira with the broken legs, in that case the lomdus wouldn't make sense. This is one nafkamina. A second distinction is whether a second way we could distinguish between our case of the dalet and the case of the legs in the on the kira is maybe in the case of the legs of the kira it needs a more professional repair or it's genuinely broken and it needs to be properly fixed, whereas in our case it can just be reattached. You're not allowed to do it on Shabbos, but it's a reattachment as opposed to repair. Maybe we only say the svara that the keli isn't muktza because it's made to be repaired, and all that's involved is a reattachment as opposed to a genuine repair. In a case where you need a genuine repair, maybe that's why the Rabbi Zobin says it's muktza. And again, this would be relevant halacha l'maisa in the case of, I think I mentioned the scenario before, for example, a button that falls off a suit jacket. So a button falls off a suit jacket. The button is made to be reattached. The suit jacket in this case is not muktza, it's still a good jacket, you can still wear it, it's just a pity it's missing a button. Do we say again that muchan agav aviem, that the button is not muktza, it's muchan agav aviem? Very convenient then, I can pick up the button off the floor where it fell and put it in somewhere safe so that I can fix it after Shabbos. Or do I say, no, it's muktza? Why is it muktza? Because the whole lomdus of muchan agav aviem is when something can just be reattached. When something needs a repair, which sewing is, in that case, we don't say it's muchan agav aviem because it needs a proper repair. And the button, therefore, at least for now, has lost its shame keli and therefore would be muktza. So I hope I haven't confused everyone with this. Just to summarize, the Gemara again in Kuf Lamed Ches says that you can't move the oven with the kira with the broken legs. Rashi says the reason is because of a new gezeira, i.e. he doesn't think it's muktza. So in answer to our questions, Rashi holds no muktza applies. Agav avia makes sense over here, even though currently it's useless, because who cares, you're planning to reattach it. It makes sense even though the oven has become muktza, the parent keli is muktza, you can still say agav avien because it's only to be reattached, and it makes sense even though it may be a complicated process of reattaching. That's what Rashi holds. The Meiri and the Rabbi Zobin argue, and they say no, it's muktza. Why is it muktza? Either because they hold, since the legs are currently useless, therefore they're muktza. The whole reason why the delis isn't muktza is because it's got current use, or because they hold that the lomdus of agav avien doesn't make sense when the parent keli is muktza and the whole thing is broken, or because they hold something that needs a more significant repair than just a reattachment, isn't enough to, you can't say the svara, that it's not Muktza. So this is a very central Gemara. To summarize really what we've seen is, we've seen 3 Gemaras, and in a moment we're going to see a 4th, the sandal case of broken Kelim. The broken Keli, which is something that's a pot which breaks into shards, which Tosfos brought us, and there it's irreparable. And the question is, has it got a new functionality that you can use the shards for something? And then the 2 scenarios of repairable utensils, the oven door scenario and the broken leg scenario, where according to Rashi, the 2 sukkahs are identical. It's just with the broken legs, there's a new gezerah of perhaps you'll repair it. And according to the Rabbeinu Chananel and the Meiri and others, there's a Muktza over there. So for some reason it's different, and we're trying to analyze what the difference is. So those are the 3 scenarios we've seen a broken Kelim. And in a moment we'll look at the 4th scenario, the sandal case. Sorry, Adam.
But when Rashi, when you say it's not Muktza, isn't it that it's a different type of Muktza Mahmat Isra? You've got a Muktza in heaven. You still can't move it.
It's not clear whether that's a Muktza at all. You may be right, it may be a Muktza of sorts, or it may just be it's not a Muktza, it's a classic gezerah that they said don't move around because we're worried that you'll fix it. So it may be Muktza terminology doesn't make sense over here. Maybe you're right, the Muktza terminology does make sense. But either way, it's not the Muktza that we're talking about. It's not Muktza because fundamentally it ceased to be a Kli. Rashi says fundamentally is a Kli, there's just a new gezerah, Shema Yitzka. Should we call that new gezerah, define that new gezerah as Muktza or not? Interesting question. Yeah.
Is there something different about subsong or anything with legs? There's a sort of an interim stage when the legs are broken. The more legs we break, it then becomes useful again, potentially.
If all 4 legs would break,
yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I mean, first of all, I don't know whether I guess it seemingly should be able to be usable once it's broken as a low stool or a low oven or whatever it is. I don't know. Well, let's analyze it. I've never thought about this. I don't like analyzing on the spot. But let's analyze it. At the moment, it's useless. It's not omeid to break further because no one breaks things further, right? The correct thing to do is to fix it. So it's not omeid. In which case, the fact that it could get back to usefulness seemingly is irrelevant because as it currently stands, I was going to say as it currently stands, but of course it doesn't stand. As it currently halachically stands, its current halachic situation, it's useless. I don't think it's convincing to argue that it's omeid to break 2 further legs because no one would do that. The breaking of the 2 further legs is a significant activity. It's not just attaching or detaching; it's a proper break. So it's not omeid under that count. And therefore, I haven't thought about your questions. I know I'm responding too much on things I haven't thought about, but I think it would be halachically irrelevant. My guess on the spur of the moment is it's halachically irrelevant, but no significance.
Yeah. Can I just ask, this idea of Poland was running Al Gabe Aviha?
Yes.
So in later on when we started talking about Shiur HaKelim,
yes.
Rashi says specifically on there, Kishakidesh Hayom.
Yes.
When Shabbos came in, it was Mufan Al Gabe. I think you might see that somewhere else. So it seems like the concept of Mufan Al Gabe Aviha is something you think about. What was the situation when Shabbos came in? And then later on Shabbos, when it's omeid to be reattached, provided it's omeid to be reattached, then it inherits the Keli and Luchan status it had when Shabbos came in. So that's kind of what I understood. But as you were speaking just now, I kind of felt that you were putting omeid to be reattached now and Luchan like about the now.
Yes. So this is a very important point. All the way through, I kept on referring to the view that it's not Muktza, even if it's currently useless, because it's Mochan Agavaviyam and only to be reattached, as Tosfos' view, and I kept on saying probably Rashi's view, because the truth is I'm not entirely clear in Rashi for several reasons, including your point and other points. It doesn't quite read in Rashi by us. Rashi in Kuf Lamed Ches, where he talks about the kiraim that fallen off the legs that fallen off the kira, indeed holds that even though it's not Muktza, in which case it is clear that Rashi doesn't care about the current status because there is no parent Keli, even the parent Keli is broken, in which case that would fit very nicely the nuance of the language now. The reason I said not like that is because there are those who argue on Rashi, Rabbeinu Chananel and the Meiri, and we're speculating why they argue, and we can speculate 3 reasons why they argue. Either because they disagree completely with Rashi and Tosfos, which maybe happens to do, we know that, or because they hold that it currently has to be Muchan Agav Aviyam, not just at the beginning of Shabbos, and therefore if currently there's no Agav Aviyam, not. So that's why I was using the language I used. Were it not for Rashi later on, I'd be quite hesitant in Rashi by us, because the language of Rashi left me a little confused. I would say as a point of homework, Eli is bringing out a very good point when I hope over the break people manage to chazara. The Rashi is very murky, Rashi by us. It's not an entirely clear Rashi what he's saying. And that's why I keep on referring to Tosfos and probably Rashi, because it's my best guess as to Rashi and Rashi. But the Rashi later on, the reason I got to the latest sugya really was because it helped me understand and be a little more confident in the view of Rashi.
I thought we could learn what you were saying, even according to because you could say whether it inherits the status of head when Shabbos came in depends on whether it's useful now or whether it's only to be reattached and rather it's going to be reattached now. It inherits what it had when Shabbos came in. I didn't see that the Shekiddush Hayoim in the final Gabi was necessarily a problem.
I hear what you're saying, and I accept that, and I think you're probably right. The difficulty is that it's not enough that something isn't Muktza when Shabbos comes in. It needs to still have a status of Muchan, or at least a status of Kedi, throughout the course of Shabbos. In which case, even though your phraseology of it inherits the Muchan Agav Avian is accurate in Rashi, that's a little bit a way of wriggling out of confronting that Rashi saying it is currently Muchan Agav Avian because of that. And that's the wriggle space which I'm confused about, which is what makes it currently Muchan Agav Avian. Yeah. Okay. So Rashi is not entirely. The summary of the discussion though is Rashi is not entirely clear. I don't know exactly what to make of Rashi. Again, just to bring out the point, what is clear in Tosfos and reasonably clear in Rashi is that, and this is how the Mishnah Berurah paskins, that even though the Kedi is currently, even though the door is currently useless, nonetheless I think it remains with its Kedi status because it's only to be reattached. And exactly how to finish off that svara, let's leave and not get too worried about. And therefore Rashi holds this in the most extreme way. He holds this even when we're talking about the legs of the kira, where even the parent Kedi is useless, it doesn't make a difference, even if it needs to be professionally attached. I think Rashi would say that if the button falls off the suit or the stem breaks on glasses, at least leaving aside the gezerah of Shema Yitzka, it wouldn't be Muktza. I think that's reasonably certain in the view of Rashi. I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at the next Gemara of broken appliances, which is in Kuf Yud Beis, which again I recognise it's quite a complicated Gemara. So I just whether we manage to go through the Gemara inside or not, I just want to bring out the salient features. Basically, you have a sandal of sorts. I don't exactly understand the details of shoe manufacture back in Bovel 2,000 years ago, but it has straps, and it seems it has two straps: the outer strap and the inner strap. I don't know if anyone managed to. Probably should have Wikipedia'd it. I didn't think of it. Yeah, I didn't exactly understand the material. But anyway, Rashi says that when the inner strap breaks, it's fixable, and therefore it's not Muktza. And when the outer strap breaks, it's not fixable, and therefore it's Muktza. So again, I think tentatively, this is consistent with Rashi's view. Well, let's go slowly. In the case where it's unfixable, it's Muktza. I don't think that should be controversial. Something which is broken and not fixable is Muktza. No chiddush in that. Even though, and this is in reference to Eliyahu's point, even though when Shabbos came in, it wasn't Muktza. It's not enough. You can't just look at the status. The status when Shabbos comes in is what's called a necessary but not sufficient condition. It shouldn't be Muktza at the start of Shabbos. That's clear. It's not sufficient. It has to be usable now. It still has to be a Kedi now. If it loses its Shem Kedi, then it's a goner. It's Muktza. It's no longer Kli. So Rashi says that when the Ritzua is unfixable, for our purposes, whatever the Metzias of the sandal is, when the strap is unfixable, it's Muktza. That's Rashi in Kuf Yud Beis, non-controversial. Then Rashi says that when the strap is fixable, it's not Muktza. Why is it not Muktza? So again, I think the same svara, that because it's made to be reattached, it's not Muktza, like we've seen with the case of Dalet. In which case, again, Rashi is consistent with his view that he says the svara to the extreme. it's clear from the Gemara that the shoe is unwearable currently when the strap is broken. And nonetheless, and also it seems clear that the fixableness of the strap isn't just a reattachment. It's something that needs to be done. It needs to be re-sewn on by a shoemaker, whatever it may be. And nonetheless, Rashi says that it's not Muktza because it's only made to be repaired. So again, that would seem to indicate that Rashi holds that you can say Muchanag Avavien even when the parent Keli is Muktza and is currently useless. We don't just say it when the parent, again, with the oven case, sorry, not with the oven case, with the cupboard case, the cupboard is usable. It's just the door has broken off the cupboard. In this case, the parent Keli, the shoe, is unusable when the strap breaks. And even so, Rashi says it's not Muktza. So again, just to spell this out, Halacha Namaisa, if a shoe breaks on Shabbos and I don't know, the sole has come off and you're planning to repair the shoe, it wouldn't be Muktza because according to Rashi, because it's Muchan Agav Aviyam, because it's repairable, it's only made to be repaired. In this case, there wouldn't be the Gezerah Shemiyitzka. That's clear in the Gemara. There's no Gezerah Shemiyitzka, perhaps because you need to take it to a professional to repair, a shoemaker. It's not the sort of repair that there's a Gezerah that you do on Shabbos. And then for Halacha L'maisa, Rashi Paskin is not Muktza. True, the sandal is completely unusable, but nonetheless, it's made as Muchan Agav Aviyam. That's the view of Rashi, and it seems consistent again with the same story. Yeah. Rashi where in Kuf? 100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. No, that's exactly. It's still a KD, and why is it a KD? It's useless, right? And the answer is because you're planning to repair it. The repair is a technical repair that's difficult to do. Doesn't make a difference. Either KD is completely broken in the meantime and useless. It's not just the door come off a cupboard. It's a completely useless KD. Doesn't make a difference. In brief, to summarize, Rashi holds any case where a KD is repairable and not just repairable, made to be repaired, its status as a KD lingers. It remains a KD. In which case, the phrase Agav Aviyam, if we want to use it literally, is more conceptual. There is no parent here. The parents also died, right? That's the tragedy here. The shoe is broken and the strap is broken. The kira is broken and the legs are broken. Nonetheless, since it's reattachable, that's enough to not make it Muktza. Yeah.
There's not a small distinction between like the kira in its legs and the strap on its shoe. In terms of the kira in its legs, the kira is effectively a holding place for a pot. Yes, you need legs, but it's a practical part of it.
Yes.
The shoe and the strap. I'm not seeing the tolder and the oven in this case. They're really one. Like the strap is an integral part of the shoe. You don't have a strap. You don't have a shoe. Now, it is an extreme view of Russia to say that, that's fine. But it seems very different to me than the other cases.
So first of all, even if you're right, it's just taking us further.
Yeah.
So in scenario number one is you have the migdal, the cupboard with the deles, and there the deles is clearly a peripheral. Toffel and Iker, right? You can use that language. In the case of the kira, maybe you're right that the legs are more peripheral to the kira, and in the case of the sandal, it's literally the functionality of the sandal. Even if you're right, we just have a progression of ideas, but you see in Rashi all three are the same as far as Rashi is concerned. In all cases, as Adam said, it still has a shame kedi olav. That's number one. Number two, I'm not convinced you're right with the kira because the legs, and this sort of ties into Jeffy's point a little bit also, the legs of a bench maybe are peripheral. You can have a low bench and a high bench. The legs of a stovetop are not peripheral because you need to put the fire underneath. So without that, it's just a pot holder. It's got no cooking ability to it at all. So I don't know if you're right that the legs are just a sort of peripheral quality to it. Yeah.
Can I just sorry to say it again, but
yes,
it's a big chiddush to say that it's not going to have a bihan if the thing is totally broken and everything is used like even the of.
Yes.
If you say that not going to have a bihan is a concept that happens for Shekhinah Shayom,
yes,
it makes it much.
I agree with you. Nonetheless, the core svara we can't evade, which is something lingers, some kaliness lingers around the keli. because of that hachana. Something which is muchan at the start of Shabbos and becomes completely useless, becomes de-kalified, ceases to be a keli, becomes muktzah. That's inarguable. So there's something that lingers of its keli status because of the omed to be repaired. That's inarguable. Yeah, I'll just I think, did I print the Rashba here or not? Did I just print the Rashba? Yeah, good. Okay, so I'll just maybe briefly address the Rashba. Again, I'm not going to go into inside because it's in hindsight the sandal sugya is a little complicated and a little bit immersive. The Rashba asks a very important question. The Rashba says, why should the sandal be muktza? Again, sorry, maybe just before we see the Rashba, let me summarize. We've now seen 4 scenarios of broken kelim. We've seen Tosfos' scenario, it's not really Tosfos, Tosfos brought it to our attention, of shivrei kelim, where the clay, whatever vase has smashed into pieces. And the reason it's not muktzah is because each piece still can be used as a little cover or something like that. Then we have our case of the delet. Then we have the case of the kira with the broken legs. And now we have the case of the shoe with the broken straps. Sounds like the mystery of the shoe with the broken strap. So that's the 4 scenarios we've seen. The Rashba asks, why should the shoe with the broken straps be muktzah? Why shouldn't it go back to being like the shattered pot, that you can still use the broken shoe as a pot, as a cover, as you know, it's still a piece of material that can be used for things. It's no worse than a piece of clay shard. Answers the Rashba that because you're planning to repair the shoe, therefore you wouldn't use it as a cover. In other words, we're in the opposite of the Goldilocks zone. It's not too big and not too small. It's just the right size, right? It's broken enough that it's muktzah. It's not omed enough for repair that it would cease to be muktzah in this case over here. And yet, your plan is enough to fix it that it's worse than the broken shards of clay in which you would use them for a new function as just a cover, because here you wouldn't use it for a new function because it's still a shoe and you're planning to fix it. So this is the narrow range of in the svara of the Rashba of where we are. Again, are you with me why it's a narrow range? It's broken enough that it's muktzah, but it's still repairable enough that it's not like the broken shivrei kelim that you would just use it likasuyamana to use it as a cover, and therefore ends up as muktzah. Now, in that case, you see in the Rashba that the Rashba holds that it's repairable, and that's the very reason why you wouldn't just use it as a cover. And nonetheless, the Rashba holds that it's muktzah. If it's repairable, why is it muktzah? Surely it's only made to be repaired. So I think you see again in the Rashba that he holds that even though it's repairable, it would still be muktzah in the meantime. In other words, we don't say it's muchan agav aviyem. Why don't we say it's muchan agav aviyem according to the Rashba? Again, we can but speculate, but one of these reasons. Either because it's not just detachable, but needs a proper professional repair, or because the original keli is broken, and therefore agav aviyem doesn't make sense. You can't say it's not muktzah because of the parent keli, because the whole shoe is broken. So just to summarize, the Rashba says that it is muktzah. Why don't we say it's, and the Rashba holds it's repairable, because he says the very fact that it's repairable makes it different to the cheres, to the piece of broken shards, which is which you would use as a cover, like suyamana. So in the Rashba we see it's repairable. If it's repairable, then why isn't muchan agav aviyem? Why is it muktzah? Why is it not muchan agav aviyem? So you see in the Rashba again that even something that's repairable, if not just detachable, or if the original keli is broken, it would be muktzah. So again, in the scenario of the button that fell off the jacket, or the broken stem of the glasses, or something of the sort, I think the Rashba would say in all those cases, we at least should be concerned that the Rashba would say it's muktzah in those cases. So we'll finish here for today. In Mitzvah Hashem, after the new after we restart, we'll look at something we left, the other half really of the sugya, as to why a door of a house is muktzah. So that we'll look at, and then we'll move on to the next tomorrow. In the meantime, I hope everyone has a good break and uses the chance for a bit of chazara. And thank you so much, as always, for joining.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful Hanukkah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Cool.